for people who haven't seen this and you're looking at the date and you're saying, oh, this is 1933 and it's black and white and it's old as hell. No, when it comes to monster action, this delivers. Hello, Tig.
Hello, Eric.
Before we get started, since this episode we're going to be discussing a big hairy beast, this episode is dedicated to my big hairy beast who we lost a couple of days ago. Thanks for being with me, buddy. Almost 17 years. So I know that you have seen scenes from the original King Kong before. This is your first time watching the entire 1933 picture. Is that correct?
Yes, this is the first time I ever saw it.
So this is like the original giant monster picture that spawned loads and loads of imitators, really cutting edge and groundbreaking for its time. But what did you, Tig, think about it right now in the year 2021?
I was more than pleasantly surprised. I honestly thought it was amazing. I thought it was amazing.
Amazing.
Okay, we'll start from the beginning. In the beginning, it was typical. Like I was like, okay, and I kind of knew the story because they've redone. I remember the 70s King Kong as a kid. What was it, like Chris Christopherson or somebody? But I remember the 70s one, so I had the story in my head. So the beginning was fine, but once they get on the voyage and they get to the island, to Skull Island, holy crap!
Yeah, the first half an hour of this movie is actually kind of bad. The writing is pretty bad. The acting is pretty bad. It's got these really outdated tropes of like, no women on the boat. Oh,
yeah,
He-Man Women's Haters
he like
Club
accidentally hits
stuff.
the girl in the face, and the Spanish Chinese guy or something.
Boy, I was going to wait until we got into that. But yes, there are undercurrents of some very outdated views on race that are throughout the movie. And then you get to the island. And of course, this is an island that's supposed to be off the coast of Indonesia. And yet it's somehow filled with the worst stereotype of like tribal Africans that you could possibly imagine. Even in its time, there were critiques of it. But to move on past that heavy stuff, maybe we'll return to it later. Once King Kong shows up, the movie just never lets up. It never stops. Like King Kong, in a lot of these monster movies, the monster's in and out, in and out, in and out. King Kong is basically just once he shows up, he's there for the rest of the movie.
Like you said, right from the beginning of getting to the island, well, once they get past the gate, like once they get inside, I couldn't believe it, and I didn't expect to see all the dinosaurs. Like I knew about that, but I didn't expect it all. Pterodactyls, brontosauruses, and T-Rexes, and Stegosauruses, and all these things like fighting, against Kong. I didn't know about all that, so it was pretty crazy to watch.
Basically everybody, with the exception of Fay Wray, the woman character, every human and every non-human in this movie is a total dick.
Now look here, Weston. Somebody's interfered with every girl I've tried to hire. And now all the agents in town have shut down on me. All but you. You know I'm square.
Everybody knows you're square, Denham. But you've got a reputation for recklessness that can't be glossed over.
I just wanted to let you know, on my notes, I wrote, everyone is a jerk except the girl and King Kong.
Yeah.
I'm on the level. No funny business.
The monsters are just like randomly attacking people for no reason. All the human beings are jerks, and they're just like slaughtering monsters. Just the murder of the Stegosaurus is so brutal.
Shoot!
Yeah, I couldn't believe how violent it was. Was it the Stegosaurus that he ripped the mouth open, or was that the Brontosaurus?
I think that was the T-Rex.
The T-Rex?
Yeah, where he grabs the jaw and he...
Oh my God. And then he's like playing with it after, like testing it out after he like kills it. That was brutal.
And then later, like one of the dudes is there in front of it, and the jaw's all like hung open, and then it's like literally pouring blood.
Yeah. The brontosaurus scene.
Yes. Oh, with the rag dolls. When he's lifting up guys and he's tossing, like ragdoll tossing people all over the place. It's kind of shocking to think that in this 1933 picture, these people are getting torn up so bad.
There's the scene where he's tossing people over a cliff. Like they were hitting at a force that you were like, oh God, like that kind of feels like that's a real person hitting the ground. Like,
the guys are trying to cross a log, and Kong gets the log, and Kong is just like turning this log back and forth, tossing these guys into this pit.
The way that they did the whole thing where they have the screen behind, they have like the screen far back, and then they put all the set design around it. So it feels like they're there, which is really awesome. I knew when they left with that huge crew and all those crew members, I was like, this is going to be a bloodbath because they're clearly bringing all these guys with them.
Everyone in that group had a red shirt on, except for Fay Wray, the ship captain, and the main guy, Dunham.
The biggest sleazeball.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually kind of like that he's sort of a stereotypical Hollywood sleazeball, too.
Right.
That they play him that way.
Oh, I see. No, you've got me wrong. This is strictly business.
So back to the captain for just a moment, right? The captain's a complete dick to Fay Wray. He's like, oh, a woman on the boat, this is the worst thing ever. And he's constantly brushing her off.
You can't say I've been one bit of trouble to anyone.
Women just can't help being a bother. Made that way, I guess.
Well, anyhow.
And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, in one scene, he's like, I think I love you. And she's like, yeah, I guess I basically love you too.
Say, I guess I love you.
What?
Is this sort of like the 6-year-old who treats the little girl like crap, and then the girl's like, oh, I kind of like him, and he's like, oh, I kind of like you too.
Yeah, it's very like elementary school. But I mean, let's be honest, nobody watches King Kong for the human relationships and the human stories. It's all about the freaking monsters. I'll tell you what, for people who haven't seen this, and you're looking at the date and you're saying, oh, this is 1933 and it's black and white and it's old as hell. No, when it comes to monster action, this delivers.
It's unreal. Like, I really honestly finished the movie and was shocked. I couldn't believe how good it was. And I'm a big Harryhausen fan and stuff, so this is obviously predating him by 20 years, 15 years or so, like something like that.
Harryhausen was hugely inspired by this. Obviously, he saw this when he was young, and it basically created his career because he saw this and he was like, this is what I want to, what I want to do. 16 years later, he got hired to be an assistant animator on Mighty Joe Young. Harryhausen got his start doing animation on Mighty Joe Young. That was the first movie that he worked on. So there is a direct link from King Kong to the work of Ray Harryhausen.
I can see how this would inspire anybody to want to do that, because it's unreal. Like, it sounds like I'm being dramatic, but I think because I went into it just like, I seem to never learn when you give me an old movie. I'm still stuck in that, like, all right, we'll see how it goes. I can understand why this was such a huge deal when it came out in the 30s.
Yeah, and it was a smash hit. It was such a big hit. They made a sequel that same year. Son of Kong, which is the sequel to King Kong, also came out in 1933. They were right away like, oh yeah, let's bang out another one right away. Yeah, for people who complain about sequelitis in Hollywood, it's just been going on for a long time. It is not something new.
When he gets to the city, and there's all those scenes of him like sticking his hand in the window, and they obviously had to make these giant
animatronic arms.
Yeah, animatronic hands. They did such a good job, minus the close-ups on the faces, because whenever they did a close-up on his face, it was always like laughable because it looked like he was all happy and smiling.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna mention the same thing. About the only thing that to me that doesn't hold up is his facial animations. It's a little comical.
Right. Like when his face pops up in a building window, it's terrifying.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's terrific. The terror was probably even more enhanced because you think about there's the one woman that he mistakes for Fay Wray, and he brings her out, and then he's like, "Oh, this isn't her," and he's just like, whoop,
Yeah,
and drops her to her friggin' death. You know, and throughout the picture, you know, when he's in the city streets, he's lifting dudes up and like he'll take a chew and then like toss them away, you know, or on the island when he's full on stepping on natives and
Yeah.
you see them on the ground and they're just getting stomped on. Now, a lot of that stuff, interestingly, had not been seen for decades. The movie came out in 1933. By 1938, they decided this movie needed to be censored because it was too violent. And from 1938 forward, the official versions of the movie were censored. A lot of that violence had been taken out of the movie, and for decades, people weren't able to see it. They found a 16 millimeter reel of the original version with those scenes, and it was incorporated back into the movie much later on. They used to circulate through bootleg VHS cassettes. And it's only very recently, I think in 2005, I think, where they did an actual full official restoration of the movie with all that original footage put back in. For a long time, people weren't actually seeing just how violent the movie was because some of it's like kind of shocking. The body count in this movie is pretty high.
Yeah, you know how when you watch certain movies that have certain violent things that happen in them, they kind of like stay with you for some reason forever. Years later, you'd be like, oh, that scene in that one movie just always got to me. I, for now on, will always carry the bodies being tossed over the thing and the dudes being stepped on.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff and done pretty seamlessly. Like they use a technique it's similar to rear projection, like you were talking about before. They called it, I think, miniature rear projection, where they would have like large on screen the miniature, the stop motion animation stuff, and then cut out into a small portion of the screen. They would have the little bit of have the footage of the actual humans. So that's where you can get those cool shots of like the guy like peeking over the boulder and looking, and then seeing King Kong in action behind there, and the stuff I think most of it still looks really good.
I'm always impressed because when you see that stuff from back then, you know what a pain in the ass and how time consuming it must have been to make that movie.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the shots that impressed me most after they got done murdering the Stegosaurus, and I say murdering because granted, the Stegosaurus charged them first, but then they shot it a couple times, and he's like, "All right, I guess maybe this isn't a fight after all." And then these guys are like, "Let's start shooting him in the head at point blank range."
Yeah.
The thing's dead, and I think it's like Dunham and the captain are walking along like around the body as it's in its death throes, and they get to the tail, and the tail is like moving around, thrashing around. I was like, that is really good stop motion animation right there, like really cool stuff. Though there one little bit in that scene, though, you can tell they're like walking on a treadmill.
Yeah, that scene was making me laugh. Where they're like fake walking, and sometimes they'd stop walking and it would just keep moving kind of around the dinosaur.
yeah, that bit was kind of funny, but the animation was terrific. Some really cool, innovative techniques to make this stuff feel a lot more real than it has any right. Everyone knows the iconic shot of him on top of the Empire State Building, and he's hanging there and the planes swooping by and him wrecking the planes. And everyone knows, of course, he gets, he tumbles from the Empire State Building. But I think you forget that on the way down, he fucking clowns himself on the side of that building before going back down.
The iconic scene of him on the Empire State Building, I think when he's first climbing up it and you kind of see him, that's like crazy looking because it looks real. Like,
yeah, I mean, this is one of those flicks, like they've made it 4 times now. Between the 70s version, Peter Jackson's in 2005, I think it was, just a couple of years back with Skull Island. Skull Island, of course, is strict, like that whole story is strictly like the on the island portion of it. And there's a reason why they keep doing it. The story itself is pretty direct and simple, but impactful and cool. It's such a great idea, this whole like we're going to an island with all these prehistoric monsters and with this big giant gorilla. Like it's just the concept is just fun. It has a pulpy adventure vibe to it that never really gets dated. again, some of the depictions of other people definitely get dated,
Right.
but the overall sort of pulp aesthetic doesn't. The adventure is a lot of fun. You have to force yourself through that first 30 minutes because I'll be the first to admit I think the first 30 minutes is pretty bad. And once Kong appears, again, it's no exaggeration to say it is non-stop. It's literally non-stop. And then once it does finally stop because Kong is dead, the movie is literally over like that.
I never knew that last famous line, it was beauty that killed the beast, was the actual last line in the movie. It just ends.
Yeah, literally. It's just like, boom, done.
It was beauty killed the beast.
No, it wasn't beauty that killed the beast. It was you assholes who killed him. It's definitely on YouTube. People can easily find it on YouTube right now. I'm pretty sure that it's streaming. I want to say that I've seen it on Amazon. I think I've seen it on Amazon Prime. Definitely worth checking out. Just make sure, and you should be getting the uncensored version, but just make sure you're getting the uncensored version. Giant monster movies are almost always a lot of fun, and this was, this is the granddaddy of them all. I mean, this basically spawned an entire genre.
Yeah, it's crazy. Again, if whoever's watching this, if you haven't seen it, watch it.
And for those of you who have seen it, and if you've seen the other various iterations of Kong over the years, talk about your favorites down below, because I know a lot of people are big. They grew up with the 1970s version. So talk about the 1970s version in the comments. If you like that Peter Jackson one, talk about the Peter Jackson one down there. And a movie that totally surprised the hell out of me was Skull Island. I did not expect it to be so good, but I loved Skull Island. I thought it was a lot of fun. And plus all the other Kong stuff, Son of Kong and Mighty Joe Young, both Godzilla vs. King Kong movies, because there's two of them. Yeah, let's talk some Kong down in the thing.
Talk some Kong. So you know what that means.
Well, that means it's time for me to watch a movie.
That's right. You, Eric, this week will be watching the 80s classic, Roger Rabbit.
I'm sorry I yanked your ears.
All the time you yanked my ears?
Murder.
Marvin Acme. The rabbit cacked him last night.
You wouldn't have any idea where the rabbit might be?
Got a thing for rabbits, huh?
The whole thing stinks like yesterday's diapers.
It's a comedy a little different from all the rest.
I'm a pig!
I'm a tune.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. But tell me, Eddie, is that a rabbit in your pocket or are you just happy to see me?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I feel like it was one of those movies that was huge when it came out, and now nobody really talks about it anymore. But at the time, it was a huge, huge movie.
This is another one that's been on my, I really need to get around to it one of these days list. So
Well, finally getting around to it.
obviously people should do all the YouTube stuff, the subscribing, liking, and all that nonsense. Make sure you have a nice discussion with us in the comments. And if you want to check out more of our stuff, as well as exclusive videos and get early access to these movie videos and all that good stuff, you can find us at Nerd Out With Me on patreon.com, which is neat.
Come back next Saturday to see Eric and Tig. And thanks for hanging out at the movie club.
Watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Please, Eddie. Go ahead, keep waving. Go on.